Kim was actually one of the very first people I approached about this. So last year I was in Maine and I was like, listen, I know I've never met you, but I want to have coffee with you and hear about your story and figure out stuff about what makes you so amazing. Welcome to this week's episode of Hey Homegirl. Hey Homegirls, today's episode brings us to the beautiful state of Maine to chat with Kim Tarbox. Maine is known as vacation land, and Kim and I are going to dive into the importance of understanding your town and state zoning laws to help you with your second home and investor clients looking to do short-term rentals such as Airbnb and VRBO. Kim is a top producing agent who is highly regarded in her business community, but also for how passionate she is about being a realtor. I love her because she helps amplify the voices of the female agents around her. Kim is the founder of the Females of Real Estate Mastermind group in her area of Maine. Let's get started. Hey, homegirls, welcome to this week's episode. We are so thankful and excited to have Kim Tarbox here with us today. She's from Scarborough, Maine, and to me, she is definitely like one of my homegirl besties. She is so much fun to follow on social media. And
I am so excited to be here.
Oh, thank you.
I got a little goosebumps.
The best energy.
Thank you for having me, Sarah. I'm so excited. I'm your homegirl.
You are my homegirl. Kim was actually one of the very first people I approached about this. So last year I was in Maine and I was like, listen, I know I've never met you, but I want to have coffee with you and hear about your story and figure out stuff about what makes you so amazing.
Oh, I know. And that was great. And we met on a drizzly day.
Oh.
And we had followed each other on social, which I thought was so cool. And I love that you reached out because I love meeting new people. And I love meeting people when they come to Maine because I just love playing tourist and giving you and word vomiting, all the things you need to do while you're here. So I'm so grateful for that.
I think that's one of the things, in my opinion, that makes you such a successful agent is that you absolutely love where you live.
I do. It's hard not to. I will, I know I'm biased, but I'm a fifth generation Mainer. So my family has roots here and I went to college here. I met my husband here. We were high school sweethearts and we have just lived in this bubble here in Maine, and we have more trees than people, but our beauty and our things to do and just our lifestyle and the quality of lifestyle here is just so amazing and important. And COVID came and a lot of the rest of the world, or at least the United States, kind of figured that Maine is also a great place to be and hide out. So we've definitely have seen that increase for sure, but I love what we can do here. Now, do I love a winter day in January? Not all the time, but the days are a little shorter in January than they are today, but I really couldn't have asked for a better place to grow up and work.
Yeah, and be able to work. I think that's one of the things that we've come to realize that really makes up this amazing community of female real estate agents is I've been so lucky to interview these lifers that just absolutely love what they do and they love the places that they work in. And to see how that's molded your career has been pretty inspirational.
Oh, thank you.
So what is the market in Maine kind of like? In general, I know this year's a little bit weird, but are you mostly residential? Do you do a lot of investments, Airbnbs, second homes? What's going on in Portland?
Yeah, so Maine is known as a vacation land. So that's our motto. And a lot of my business has been second home families that are looking to have a summer home or even an investment property where they may only come once or twice a year, but then they'll rent it out for the rest of the season. So our summer season begins Labor Day to October, Indigenous Peoples Day. And those are really the time for people to rent properties weekly or short-term rentals. And we've got a lot of beach communities that offer seasonal properties. So it's really affordable for somebody that, lives in Massachusetts or New Hampshire or anywhere else in New England, that it's a quick drive so that they can spend long weekends and be here from May to October and, really squeeze as much summer and season out of those months. Yeah. So I work with we want to start, we want a second home in Maine because XYZ. Usually they've summered here or they've got some kind of family ties here or their children. Yeah. Or their children went to college here and they just fell in love with the area. And then they'll always say, and we plan on retiring here. So this is going to be eventually our retirement home. And I always like laugh because I'm like, you'll buy this and then you'll find something else. You'll call me and you're going to want that. And that will be your retirement home. I'm like, you'll keep this as an investment and your kids and stuff and grandkids will come here and you'll be up the road. Like that's always how it goes.
Yep.
Out of state clients that are looking to invest in the area. And what's really interesting is like they'll always start and say, well, so right now, very weather dependent here. We have seasonality here in our market. I'm sure like just like our spring market starts at the middle of April. I always joke with people, once the kids come back from February vacation, people start thinking about spring, and
Yes.
especially if we have had a mild winter, which we've had the last couple of years. And so our spring market starts, I will say like middle of March right through the end of June. Come 4th of July weekend, the kids are out of school and people are at the beach, and July and August tend to be quieter here, which is a great opportunity for those buyers that may have been sidelined in the spring. And then come the middle of September, after college students go back and kids are enrolled in school, it's like everybody kind of wakes up and they're like, oh, we need to sell the house or buy another house before the end of the year. It's so funny. It's like an awakening. And so then that's our second market. Or, it's not as strong as the spring market, but it picks up. We see a huge increase in sales again. And that really can go towards like the middle of December, because if you're dealing with cash, you can close within a couple of weeks. And there's a lot of people that need to do like 1031 exchanges and calendar year and stuff like that. So that's really kind of I call it BC, before COVID.
Yep.
Season. This year has been a little bit different, much like the last couple of years. We're seeing like our spring now just really been pushed into June, mid-June, and like going gangbang, right now. So it's interesting.
Yeah, it's been a super interesting year. And I know earlier when we talked, you said you're still seeing a lot of cash in your marketplace, which
Oh yeah.
is really, really great, because I know
Yeah.
from my area of Massachusetts, we weren't seeing a ton of cash up until COVID. And then the amounts of cash, it's really been interesting to see how that's changed our marketplace a little bit.
Yeah. I joke like 10 years ago, if you were a cash client, or if you
Yeah.
were a cash buyer,
King.
you might as well just pick any house you wanted. You got it.
Yep.
And you probably got it for 10% less. You know
Yep.
what I mean? Like there was no arguing. You got a cash deal and it was like, heck yeah. And now it's like, oh, you're a cash deal. Okay. Like I've got
For the
30
other
others.
10 people. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like you and 30
Yes.
other people. Like, and now like with financing, thank goodness that the lenders have really brought it, and they have understood the need for our finance buyers to be competitive with those cash deals. So even finance deals are getting the deal done before a cash deal now, because they're able to, the terms are tighter, they're just as good as cash, basically.
Yep, 100%. As long as they can cover any discrepancy in the
Yeah,
appraisal, that's what I counsel my clients on also. So
for sure.
I'm curious, because you're in New England where there hasn't been a ton of new construction over the course of the last 10, 15 years. How has that Airbnb kind of niche changed your landscape for buyers? Have you
It's such
seen a lot of investors where like over the last 5 years, where that has made it more difficult for your first time home buyers?
That's such a great question. Yes, in the twofold for here in Maine. Airbnb short-term rentals
Yeah.
in Maine for up until the last, I would say 12 to 24 months, have kind of been willy-nilly, for the lack of a better term. Most towns did not have a true outline, regulations, zoning, laws around it at all. It was just, you had a property and you could rent it. It didn't matter. You know what I mean? There was really nobody overlooking that. In the last 2 years, I have seen significant changes in towns and cities. Cracking down might be seems a little ominous, but really putting boundaries and parameters around that. There's a lot of like not in my neighborhood attitudes about things, and there's been some pushback about that. So we've gone from a time where it didn't matter what you bought or what you owned, you could do whatever you wanted, to now in certain communities, it's only certain streets that are allowed short-term rentals. And the cities and towns have software now that will scan and search those sites to see if there's anybody in violation of that. And so it has gotten very interesting. And it's one of the first things I talk about with clients, like, what is your purpose with this property? Like, how are you going to use it? How are you going to live in it? Because if you have any thoughts of using it as a rental we've got to talk about this now. Because yes, I have no control over what happens 5 years from now. Like if you're allowed to short-term rent now and 3 years later you can't. But if this is even remotely a part of your landscape or a part of your plan, we need to have those conversations now. And I don't think a lot of people know that. I don't think a lot of people take that into consideration, or at least it seems more of a surprise with the people that I'm talking with. They're like, oh, what do you mean? Like, I have to get licensed and I have to have code enforcement come through my property before I even put it on Airbnb or Verbo or whatever? And I'm like, yeah, you get a rubber stamp before you do that. You have to pay to have those things. So it's a big conversation to have with people who think that they can just come in, buy a property, use it a couple times a year, and then make a obscene amount of money. There's a formula to it.
Thank goodness that you're a true professional that wants to guide them through that process, because you and I both know there are a lot of agents that have only been in the business a short amount of time that want that paycheck and aren't going to worry about having those conversations.
Yeah. And it's hard because every town's different, every city's different. What is true today will not be true tomorrow. And sometimes it is trial by error. You just have to, stay on it and be aware. And I always, it's hard to go to these town meetings, but when it's being talked about, when you have home ownership rights being talked about in your community, you just have to suck it up and go, because you've got to learn this. You've got to know this stuff, or you have to at least know that it's on someone's radar about something. And that's what we as realtors are doing. We have to fight for home ownership and
100%.
the rights.
And I think you hit the nail on the head where, yes, these decisions might impact your neighborhood. For the consumers that are out there that might be listening to our podcast that live in Maine, or people that live in towns, you might not want that right in your own backyard. But the reality is that you're voting on inhibiting your own property rights down the road, which is super interesting to think about.
In Portland, there's been a lot of kerfuffle about rent control. South Portland has passed a much easier and manageable rent control, but they just had a big push as a board and as a community to really have homeowners of multi-units understand what that actually means for them. And not a lot of people go beyond the surface. I empathize or I sympathize, because there is, where do you start? Like, if you've been a landlord of a 4-unit for the last decade and you've got tenants in there that are great, if you're not understanding the law right now, and you kept those 4 tenants at like $700 a month because they're great tenants, they've been there for a decade, you don't have to worry about it. Well, if they ever move out and you never increase their rent, like, as a landlord now, you can't bring that rent to market.
Yeah, you can't jump to 1400.
You can't just jump it from, And so people don't understand that. And so, there isn't a problem until there's a problem. And so it's just, I'm very passionate about having people understand like what they're getting into. And I'm not trying to like scare people. I think gone are the days of Joe Blow just being like, I'm gonna buy this property and we're to do whatever I want, and it is what it is. You really have to, it's a business, and you have to run it that way, like most things that are important. And you have to know what you're doing. You have to know what your job is as the landlord. Even if you are living there yourself, you have to understand the process, because you're not going to live there the whole time.
Make sure that you're partnered with the right people. So whether that's your insurance company or your property maintenance company or your attorneys or your realtors, and make sure that you're having kind of constant conversations with those professionals about how our industry is changing, because it is. Thank you for listening to today's episode. We're not quite finished yet, But as the homegirl of your hometown, I would love to pass the mic to you so that you can share your story and some of your secrets with the homegirl community. To apply, please go to howtobeahomegirl.com in the show notes.
I mean, every month there's something new. Like, oh my God, I didn't know that. Like,
And we just don't have as much land here in New England. So much of our land is protected that it's not like other places in the country where you can just put up these huge multiplexes and have housing places for people. So I think our little corner of the world is so interesting.
In Maine, in particular, last year they passed a law called LD 2003, and I'm like getting way over my head on this, but which is allowing, starting like this July of this year, that it will allow for homeowners to have accessory dwelling units on their property,
Like
without necessarily to meet all the regular regulations around that. So, the cities and towns are now having to, this was a state legislative move and change. So now the cities and towns have to kind of start complying and then applying it to their zoning rules and regulations. And are there exceptions? Are there variances? So, it's going to be a giant learning curve for everybody. Getting to your point, like, we don't have a lot of land here. And so for Maine, that is their hope, is to help, bridge the gap, because as of like last spring or last fall, we were 20,000 homes short of what we needed just to be equal or balanced. So that's their thought on it. It'll be interesting to see how that works out. And
super interesting stuff.
yeah, I don't know how, parents can downsize from like a 2,500 square foot home to like a 700 square foot accessory dwelling unit, like an in-law apartment. And for most cities in Maine and towns in Maine, that's what an accessory dwelling unit could not exceed. 700 square feet. I'm like, okay, well, that's great if you're 21, but I don't know, I don't know a lot of seniors that can downsize that much.
Yeah. That's
You know what I mean?
Yep. And it's like, I'll be curious to see if they have like homes or condos in other parts of the country, and to see how kind of, that kind of changes the landscape of Maine. But
Yeah.
you
It's fascinating. It's political.
Yeah.
It's great.
And it's
Everyone
great
has an opinion.
It's great that your state is open-minded enough about that, because in Massachusetts, we are so strict about our building codes that we've pushed for something like this, and they won't even consider it. You know what I mean?
Wow.
The need for housing is so bad.
They may wish they didn't consider it. We'll see how it goes.
Yeah.
A for effort. I'm excited to see what happens and to see some of the creativity that will come from this. And like anything, change is going to be challenging for everybody, but I think in the long run, it'll help a lot of people out.
As a female realtor, you seem to me as somebody that's very interested. And as a female realtor, you just seem like you're very, very vested in being a part of the National Association of Realtors. I know that you're involved in the Women's Council of Leadership, and you make it an effort to really understand some of the political, attributes and things that we as realtors kind of get into. So what are 2 or 3 reasons as to why you decided to be so invested in that as part of your business?
Oh man, I don't know where it stemmed from. President of the Women's Council of Realtors in Maine this year, and I am also a board of director of my board, and I'm also a state director at the Maine Association of Realtors. And it's all been within the last like 12 to 24 months that I've kind of like deep dived into this end of our industry. And I guess I'm a little bit of a feminist at heart, especially like just in our industry. It's not uncommon that it's not a mystery that there's more women in real estate than there are men. Like I think it's like
67%.
Yeah. However, it's been my experience that even though we kind of outnumber that, I'm still dealt with, or I've come across with a lot of inequality when it comes to my counterparts on the other side. Like most things, if we don't fight for it, it'll go away. And Women's Council of Realtors is a prime example of NAR did not allow women to vote at the National Association of Realtors level. And so that is why Women's Council became to be so that it was a woman's vote. And that was in what, 1936. And, when we did the right to vote was what, 1920. So 16 years later, a national organization that is comprised by mostly women didn't allow them to vote. Like, it's so bizarre to me. And so now here in 2023, and what women are facing, outside of the real estate world, just in general, it just really, I'm super passionate about it. I think women in leadership is a strong focus that I am taking my business into. I started it's for females of real estate mastermind group. And that kind of sprang out of COVID, in the sense that, nobody was doing anything, as nobody meaning like there wasn't any events with other real estate agents, the board and all that stuff. We were all trying to, stay safe and so on and so forth. But by like 2021, I was kind of getting ants in my pants, and I was like, okay, like, let's just sit outside and like talk about the industry. Like, we weren't going to conferences, everything was Zoom, and I was like over it. And so I said, what if I created a mastermind group of just women in my marketplace that I know and like to do business with, or I want to know more about and admire them, and we just come together once a month and just talk about our business, about how to be better business owners, about how to be better realtors, about how to be better co-brokes to each other. Like, that's the meat and potatoes of our industry. And I think it's that collaboration, and women are just, not for nothing, we're just kind of better at that stuff. Yeah. And I wanted to really like hone in on that and build people up, because the fact of the matter is, like, not everybody's on this planet forever, right? We're here for a short time, not a long time. And I am seeing a lot of people like, retire out, and yay for them. So it's like this whole next generation of realtors and that need to be leaders, right? Because we've had a couple of years where that leadership has been out of the market for us to look at. And so mentors, leadership, like, it's just, we need it.
And as females in this industry, I think sometimes we're expected to just show up and have a smile on our face and not act like everything's fine, when I know that the way you service your clients, there are challenging times, there's challenging transactions. Sometimes even within your own office, there aren't people that you feel safe talking to about those things. So the fact that you can bring these people together and give them a safe place to feel vulnerable, and almost like a sisterhood kind of companion thing, and know that there's enough business out there for all of us.
Oh yeah.
Working together in a healthy manner. You know what I mean?
Oh, for sure. Years ago, and I guess I've been doing this for like 14 years now. And years ago, I would see, or I'd probably pinpoint, well, like, that's kind of like, we're all competitors, right? Or competitors, right? But honestly, like, the women in that group, like, yeah, we're in the same marketplace. But honestly, the people that are working with me are not going to be the same people that are going to be working with Sally or Christina or whatever. They're just not. Like, we may know the same people, but you attract your tribe. Your vibe is your tribe. And like, I'm going to attract certain people that Sally or Christina are not. Yeah, it just is what it is. And I don't feel threatened by that. It's just not even a thought to me, because
you have so much confidence in what you do. You know who your clients are, and you know that you're not duplicatable.
Yeah. If I go against them, 99% of the time, I don't even know who I'm going up against, because even if I do ask, they never tell you.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? And it isn't until you see it listed with somebody else or whatever. But you know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I just don't, like, why waste the energy on it? I would much rather spend my energy and time about talking about how to run my business more efficiently and be more productive, and
how to elevate the women in your community to a better standard.
Yeah, that's true, because, oftentimes, like, this is an industry of like low threshold of entry. This could easily be part-time for some people. And again, not, if you have to do what you have to do. And like, this is the biggest asset that most
100%
people are doing.
I agree with you.
And I just, I feel very passionately about that. I got to give this 110%. And personally, I wouldn't be able to do that if I was distracted by another job. You know what I mean? So I got to make this work.
And you're willing to share that knowledge and that expertise with other women in your direct industry that are, in need of that, and learn from them as they can learn from you, which is huge. I think one of the things you and I have talked about a couple of different times is the way Selling Sunset and other reality TV shows, like, how they portray female realtors and how these are women that, yes, get to handle multi-million-dollar glitzy properties, and they all look amazing, but they aren't showing them in the most educated light. And I'm sure that these women are super educated. I'm sure that they're very, very negotiating savvy and they're marketing savvy. But the reality is TV shows like that kind of paint us in that competition catty way. And
Yeah.
that's not how the bulk of agents are across the country. And one of the things I love about what I've learned from you over the course of the last couple of years of our friendship is your content is learn from me content. It is not look at me content. It's not, oh, look at them, look what they're doing wrong content. It's very much like I am the seasoned professional in my area and I give back and I love on my community in amazing ways.
Oh, well, thank you. And that's exactly what I'm trying to portray.
Good.
So yay. Like I think it's so important to me, and maybe this is my own head trash from whatever, but to be taken seriously. Before real estate in my previous life, I was in radio, and that was a very male dominated industry. And you had to be loud to be heard. And you had to, really, you couldn't be a wallflower.
Masculine energy.
Yeah.
You had to tap into that masculine energy.
Exactly. And so now when I have this as my own business, it's like, okay, I need to show up for my clients the way that I wanted someone to show up for me. You know what I mean? And you're going to work with me because I'm going to help you get what you want. You're not going to work with me because I have lash extensions. You know what I mean? Like I do now. I don't have them on now, but I do.
Yours are good. Yours are good.
I fell off when I came back from Italy. So I was like, oh, whatever. But you know what I mean? Like it serves nothing for our industry. It creates this fake.
Yeah, it perpetuates the stereotype of women that might have been true in the 1990s, but we've worked really hard to climb that ladder to say this is not me versus you. This is me and you working hand in hand to push everybody else out of our industry that doesn't belong here anymore.
Right. I know that at the end of the day, that's probably not what they want to convey, but for whatever reason, that's how they feel they need to convey. And I know that's on them, and it's, not my monkeys, not my circus. But, when I take that 30,000 foot view of like the industry as a whole, like that does no service to the consumer. It does no service to your industry. You're just, like you said, perpetuating a stereotype. We need to just put that aside and not, you shouldn't be recognized for that. You should be recognized for what you do for your clients, because that's what matters, not that you're in a mini skirt with your, Dolce Gabbana. I mean, don't get me wrong. I love me some handbags and I love me some but I just don't feel like I need to.
They're totally great. Yeah. It's more so the competition that they're formulating and the cattiness that they're forming on those shows. Yeah. And I would think that anyone that's selling a multi-million-dollar property is going to hire an agent that is well-versed in that neighborhood, in their negotiation skills and marketing the property the right way. They're going to be less worried about what kind of car that agent is driving or how much Botox they've had. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. I mean, years ago, I had a client that, I think I had a rental car or something. And at the time, and it was, they gave me like the real fancy one, right? Because they want you to buy the real fancy one. And I was meeting with these clients and they were first time home buyers. And they had said something about my car, like in a kind of like in a passive aggressive way. And I was like, oh no, like this is a rental. But I tried to put them at ease because they felt intimidated or they felt uncomfortable. And again, that's like their feelings about it and their issues with it. But at the same time, like I'm in a service industry, know your audience kind of thing. And I don't know, like it can be skewed in a negative fashion sometimes, and whether you mean to or not. And I think we just have to be more aware of it.
And just so everybody knows, I got my car talk episodes from Miss Kim, which
my lessons from Alexis.
Your lessons from Alexis and Glenda Baker's post from the Porsche.
Yeah.
Which is just, it's amazing to be able to follow other great real estate agents and learn from them, even when you've been in the industry as long as I have. So I love that. As we wrap up today, one question I love to ask all of my guests each week is, for new agents getting into the market or other females that might be struggling in our industry, what is one piece of empowerment advice that you can give them?
Ooh, so good. It's like so Brene Brown. That that I could give them? I would say caught myself saying this a lot of my friends in the industry. Do not compare your chapter to somebody else's story. You know what I mean? Like your chapter right now is your storybook, and my chapter book is vastly different. And so do not compare our stories. It's not going to do us any good. And so you need like that is like comparison will get you nowhere.
And the more you're focused on that, the longer it's going to take you to write your story.
You got to be present in your own story. You can't be minding everybody else's chapters. Like choose your own adventure.
I love that. I love that. My adventure would love to go to Maine and have bakery goods with you again.
Yes.
Sometime soon. Oh, friend, I know it took us a couple of tries to get here, and I so appreciate the connection that I've made with you and the time that you've been able to spend with me. So thank you.
Oh, thank you. I loved it. Thank you so much. I'm honored.
I can't wait to see you again in person soon.
Yes.
Okay.
Bye.
All right. Bye.